Betrayal and Triumph. Jessica's story. The rain tapped against the windows, a gentle rhythm that might have been soothing on any other evening. I remember how the droplets caught the glow of my phone screen, casting tiny prisms across my kitchen counter. That counter, white marble with delicate gray veins, I picked it out myself when we renovated. Ryan had complained about the cost, but eventually gave in. "Whatever makes you happy, Jess," he'd said with that smile I once thought was genuine. The memory flashed through my mind as I stared at the message that had just appeared on my screen. 6 years of marriage reduced to a text. A text, not even a phone call. "I'm leaving you. Amanda and I are together now. Don't try to contact me." My finger hovered over the screen, trembling slightly. The words blurred as my eyes filled with tears I refused to let fall. Amanda, my boutique's newest employee, 26, ambitious. I'd hired her myself 8 months ago, impressed by her enthusiasm and eye for fashion. I'd even invited her to our home for dinner several times. And all this time. I scrolled down, half expecting more explanation, perhaps some feeble attempt at justification. Instead, what I found made my stomach drop. A notification from our joint bank account, completely drained. Every penny we'd saved together, gone. But there was worse to come. An alert from the bank about a loan approval. A massive debt, newly opened in my name. How was this even possible? Then I remembered the stack of papers Ryan had asked me to sign last month. "Just some insurance updates," he'd said casually. "Nothing important." My name is Jessica Winters, and this is the story of how my husband of 6 years tried to destroy me, and how I rose from the ashes of his betrayal. I inhaled deeply, my fingers white-knuckled around my phone. The panic threatened to overwhelm me, but I pushed it down. This wasn't the time for hysteria. Looking back, I should have seen this coming. The late nights he claimed were work meetings. The sudden password changes on his laptop. The way Amanda would avoid eye contact during staff meetings at my boutique. What Ryan didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that I had suspected something for months. Not specifically Amanda, not exactly theft, but something. Call it intuition, call it self-preservation, but I had quietly opened my own separate bank account 3 months earlier. I'd been gradually transferring portions of my personal earnings there, away from our joint account. I had also been keeping meticulous records of all our financial dealings, including screenshots of every suspicious transaction Ryan had made. The rain intensified outside, matching the storm brewing inside me, but unlike the chaos of the weather, my thoughts were becoming remarkably clear. Crystal clear. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my phone across the room. I didn't collapse into a heap of desperate sobs like Ryan probably expected I would. Instead, I opened my contacts and scrolled to a number I had added just 2 weeks earlier. "Hello, Jessica," answered the crisp, professional voice of Diana Chen, one of the city's most formidable divorce attorneys. "I wasn't expecting to hear from you so soon." "It's time," I said simply, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. He made his move. "I see," Diana replied, and I could hear her shifting into work mode. "Do you have the documentation we discussed?" "All of it, plus something new. He's taken out a loan in my name, without my knowledge or consent." The silence on the other end spoke volumes. When Diana finally responded, her voice had taken on a steely edge. "That's fraud, Jessica. Clear and simple." "I know." "And the divorce papers?" "Do you want me to proceed as we discussed?" I glanced at the rain-streaked window, watching a particularly large droplet make its winding path downward. How similar to tears they looked. But they weren't my tears. I wouldn't give Ryan the satisfaction. "Yes," I confirmed. "Let's proceed exactly as planned." What Ryan thought would be his moment of triumph was just the beginning of his downfall. He expected me to call him, to beg, to plead. He expected me to fall apart without him. He thought I'd be so devastated by his betrayal that I wouldn't think clearly enough to protect myself. He was wrong. As I ended the call with Diana, I walked through my house, looking at everything with new eyes. The framed photos of us smiling in Bali, in Paris, in New York. The expensive furniture we'd carefully selected together. The life we'd built that had all been a charade. He never intended to grow old with me here. This had all been part of his elaborate plan. Marry a successful woman, enjoy the lifestyle, then leave with as much of her money as possible. I removed our wedding photo from the mantel, studying it with detached curiosity. I looked so happy, so trusting. My white dress, his charcoal suit, both of us beaming, both of us lying, me about being completely happy, him about, well, everything. I didn't throw the photo against the wall like women do in movies. Instead, I carefully placed it in a drawer. Evidence. Everything was evidence now. The next morning dawned bright and clear, the storm having passed in the night. As I sipped my coffee, I received a notification on my banking app. A transaction alert. 2 first-class tickets to Hawaii, charged to my credit card. A luxury resort booking at the Mauna Kea. Several $1,000s just like that. Ryan's parting gift to himself and his new love. I smiled for the first time since receiving his message. How predictable. How foolish. With a few precise taps on my phone, I reported the charges as fraudulent. I detailed to the bank representative exactly what had happened, my voice calm and factual. I explained about the unauthorized loan. I requested an immediate freeze on all joint accounts and cards. The representative, initially skeptical, became increasingly sympathetic as I laid out the facts. "We'll need to investigate, of course," she said, "but given the circumstances and the documentation you've described, we should be able to reverse these charges within 24 to 48 hours. In the meantime, those cards will be frozen. No further charges can be made." "Thank you," I replied, imagining Ryan and Amanda, luggage in hand, being told their tickets were invalid. Their hotel reservation canceled. Their escape plan thwarted before it had even begun. I spent the rest of the day in my boutique, Winter's Wardrobe, the business I built from scratch while Ryan claimed to be supporting my little hobby. The same business that now generated enough revenue to support both of us comfortably. The business Ryan had been trying to claim partial ownership of despite never investing a penny or working a single day there. My employees noticed something was different. I could see it in their careful glances, their hushed conversations that stopped when I walked by. Amanda's absence was conspicuous, her workstation untouched. "Amanda won't be returning," I announced during our morning meeting, my voice professional and devoid of emotion. "We'll be restructuring her duties until we can hire a replacement." No one asked questions. The speculation would come later, I knew, but for now they simply nodded and returned to work. I buried myself in inventory reviews and spring collection planning, finding solace in the familiar routine. The boutique had always been my sanctuary. Now it would also be my battleground. My phone rang just after lunch. Ryan's mother, Eleanor. "What did you do to my son?" she demanded without preamble, her voice shrill with accusation. I stepped into my office, closing the door behind me. "Hello, Eleanor," I said calmly. "I think there's been some misunderstanding." "He says you've frozen all the accounts, reported him to the bank. He and Amanda are stranded at the airport." So it had worked. They were indeed standing at the departure gate, luggage at their feet, unable to board their flight to paradise. I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction before responding. "Eleanor," I began, keeping my voice level, "did Ryan tell you why I might have done that?" "He said you're being vindictive because he's leaving you." "Did he mention that he emptied our joint account first? That he took out a fraudulent loan in my name? That he charged thousands of dollars for a Hawaiian vacation with his mistress on my credit card?" Silence stretched between us. I could almost see Eleanor's face, the initial certainty giving way to doubt. He didn't say anything about that," she finally admitted, her voice smaller. "I understand you're his mother and you want to protect him. But Eleanor, I'm the victim here, not Ryan." Another long pause. I heard a shaky intake of breath. "Are you sure?" "About the money, I mean. That doesn't sound like my son." "I have all the bank statements, Eleanor. All the evidence. I'd be happy to show you." I didn't know," she whispered. Then, almost to herself, "What has he done?" I didn't gloat. I didn't press the advantage. Instead, I softened my tone. "I'm sorry you've been dragged into this, Eleanor. I've always respected you." She was quiet for so long I thought she might have hung up. Then, "I need to think about this. But Jessica, I am sorry. Whatever has happened, I am sorry." The call ended, and I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Ryan's family had always adored him, the golden boy who could do no wrong. Now they would begin to see the truth. The first domino had fallen. The emergency hearing was scheduled for the following week. Diana had worked miracles, expediting the process given the financial fraud involved. I spent the intervening days gathering every piece of evidence, every bank statement, every suspicious email or text from Ryan's devices that I could legally access. The morning of the hearing dawned gray and cool. I dressed carefully in a tailored navy suit from my own boutique's premium line. Professional, dignified, strong. I pulled my dark hair into a sleek chignon and applied minimal makeup. I wanted to look like exactly what I was. A successful businesswoman who had been wronged, not a vengeful ex. The courthouse was imposing, all marble and solemnity. Diana met me on the steps, her expression confident. "You've got this," she assured me, her briefcase bulging with our evidence. "Judge Montgomery is fair but strict. He despises financial manipulation in divorce cases." I nodded, taking a deep breath. "Let's do this." We entered the courtroom and took our places. Minutes later, Ryan walked in with his attorney, a man I recognized as James Wilton, known for representing wealthy husbands in messy divorces. Ryan looked different than I expected, not triumphant, but anxious. His normally immaculate appearance was slightly disheveled, his eyes darting around the room. When they landed on me, I maintained steady eye contact, refusing to look away first. He was the one who finally broke the gaze, leaning over to whisper something to his lawyer. Amanda wasn't with him. I wondered briefly where she was, then decided it didn't matter. Judge Montgomery entered, and the proceedings began. Diana presented our case methodically, laying out the evidence of Ryan's financial misdeeds one by one. The drained joint account, the fraudulent loan, the unauthorized credit card charges, the attempts to claim part ownership of my boutique despite the clear documentation that it was established before our marriage with my personal funds. "Furthermore, Your Honor," Diana continued, her voice clear and confident, "Mr. Winters attempted to create a paper trail suggesting that he had been an integral part of the business operation, going so far as to create backdated emails and documents, which our forensic IT specialist has identified as having been created within the last 3 months." I watched Ryan's face pale as Diana presented the digital evidence. His lawyer looked increasingly uncomfortable, shuffling through his papers as if searching for a counter-argument that didn't exist. When it was their turn to present, Wilton tried to paint me as the manipulator, claiming that Ryan had contributed sweat equity to my business and deserved compensation. He suggested that the loan had been discussed between us, that I had simply forgotten about it, that the Hawaiian trip was supposed to be a cooling-off period for Ryan to gather his thoughts. Judge Montgomery's expression grew increasingly skeptical as Wilton spoke. When Ryan took the stand, attempting to portray himself as the victim of a controlling wife, the judge interrupted him mid-sentence. "Mr. Winters," he said sharply, "the documentation presented by Mrs. Winters' attorney tells a very different story than the one you're sharing. Are you aware that making false statements under oath constitutes perjury?" Ryan faltered, looking to his lawyer for support. Wilton whispered something to him, and Ryan's shoulders slumped visibly. "I may have made some financial decisions without fully consulting my wife," he admitted reluctantly. "Some financial decisions," the judge repeated dryly. "Like emptying a joint account of over $87,000? Like taking out a $125,000 loan in your wife's name using forged signatures? Like attempting to claim partial ownership of a business that predates your marriage and to which you have made no documentable contribution?" Ryan didn't answer, his expression a mixture of defiance and fear. The judge didn't need to hear more. His ruling was swift and unequivocal. The debt was to be removed from my name and placed solely on Ryan's. The money taken from our joint account was to be repaid to me in full. Any claims to my business were denied completely. The divorce was granted on grounds of fraud and financial misconduct. "Mrs. Winters," Judge Montgomery addressed me directly. "While divorce proceedings typically involve a division of assets acquired during the marriage, the evidence of Mr. Winters' systematic financial abuse and fraud warrants a deviation from standard practice. You will retain full ownership of your primary residence and all business assets. Mr. Winters will be responsible for all legal fees associated with these proceedings." I sat very still, absorbing his words. Diana squeezed my arm gently in silent congratulation, Thank you, Your Honor, I said simply. As we exited the courtroom, I passed Ryan in the hallway. He looked shell-shocked, his attorney already on the phone, presumably trying to figure out how to mitigate the disaster. For a moment, our eyes met. I expected to see anger, perhaps hatred. Instead, I saw something that surprised me. Fear. He was afraid. Of the future, of the consequences, perhaps even of me. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply nodded once and continued walking, Diana at my side. Congratulations, she said as we descended the courthouse steps. That went even better than we anticipated. Thank you for everything, I replied. What happens now? Now you rebuild. And Ryan? Well, Ryan pays the price for his choices. And pay he did. In the months that followed, I watched from a distance as Ryan's carefully constructed world crumbled piece by piece. Unable to access the money he'd stolen from me, and faced with substantial legal fees and the fraudulent loan now in his name, he was forced to find work quickly. But his resume, padded with exaggerations and half-truths, didn't hold up under scrutiny. The executive-level positions he applied for rejected him one after another. Meanwhile, my boutique flourished. Word of what had happened spread through our community, and an unexpected wave of support surged my way. Women I'd never met came specifically to shop at Winter's Wardrobe, telling me they admired my strength, my resilience. Business increased by nearly 40% in the first quarter after the divorce. I hired a new employee to replace Amanda, a woman in her 50s returning to the workforce after raising her children. She had an impeccable eye for fashion and a warmth that the customers loved. The boutique felt renewed, refreshed. As for Amanda, I heard through mutual acquaintances that the reality of life with Ryan had quickly fallen short of her fantasies. The luxury trips, the expensive restaurants, the lavish gifts, all of it had been funded by my money. Without access to that, Ryan couldn't maintain the lifestyle he'd promised her. 6 months after the courthouse victory, I was reviewing quarterly sales figures in my office when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I made a terrible mistake. Can we talk? Amanda. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without replying. Whatever drama was unfolding between Ryan and Amanda, it was no longer my concern. I had a business to run, a life to rebuild. 3 weeks later, I received a similar message, this time from Ryan. Jess, please. Everything's falling apart. I need to talk to you. This one I didn't delete immediately. I studied it, trying to discern what he could possibly want from me now. Money, most likely. Or perhaps forgiveness, though I doubted Ryan was capable of genuine remorse. I finally replied with a single sentence. Contact my attorney if you have matters to discuss. He didn't respond, and I didn't expect him to. Diana would have nothing to offer him. A month later, I was at a local cafe when I overheard a conversation at the next table. Did you hear about Ryan Winters? Apparently, Amanda left him, packed up and moved to Chicago. He's living with his parents now, if you can believe it. 45 years old and back in his childhood bedroom. I kept my expression neutral as I sipped my latte, pretending not to listen. But the news settled into me with a surprising sense of closure. Ryan, who had been so confident, so arrogant, so certain of his cleverness, had lost everything. The woman he'd betrayed me for, the money he'd stolen, the respect of his family and friends, his independence. As for me, I was thriving. The boutique had expanded to a second location. I had purchased a smaller, more modern house that felt entirely mine. I had reconnected with friends who had drifted away during my marriage. Ryan had never liked them, I realized now, because they saw through him in ways I hadn't. One sunny morning, almost a year after that fateful text message, I walked into the original Winter's Wardrobe location, sunlight streaming through the big display windows, illuminating the spring collection I'd personally curated. The staff greeted me warmly, already busy with the day's first customers. The register chimed with a sale. The scent of the fresh flowers I had delivered weekly filled the air. I paused in the center of the boutique, taking it all in. This place, this sanctuary, this creation of mine that Ryan had tried to claim, to tarnish. He had failed. I had prevailed. In the dressing room area, I overheard a customer speaking to one of my employees. "This place is amazing," she was saying. "And that owner, Jessica, right? I read about her in the business journal. started from scratch, built this empire, even overcame that awful divorce scandal. What an inspiration. I smiled to myself as I continued to my office. Inspiration. Yes, perhaps I was. Not because I was perfect, not because I'd never made mistakes, but because when life had knocked me down, when Ryan had tried to destroy everything I'd built, I had gotten back up, stronger, wiser, more determined than ever. My phone buzzed as I settled at my desk. A message from Diana. Just got a call from Wilton. Ryan wants to renegotiate the settlement. Claims financial hardship. I told him we're not interested unless he's proposing to increase the repayment. Thought you'd enjoy knowing he's still struggling while you're flourishing. Karma's a beautiful thing. I chuckled softly, typing back a quick thank you. Karma indeed. Or perhaps just the natural consequences of one's actions. Ryan had sown deceit, betrayal, and theft. Now he was reaping the harvest of those choices. As I turned to my work for the day, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The pain had been real, the betrayal devastating, but I had refused to let it define me. Instead, I had used it as fuel, as motivation to become even more successful, even more independent. Ryan had thought he was writing my ending. Instead, he had only set the stage for my new beginning. A beginning built on my own terms, shaped by my own hands, uncompromised by the presence of someone who had never truly valued me. I opened my calendar, noting the meeting scheduled for later that afternoon. Potential investors interested in helping me take winter's wardrobe national, something I'd dreamed of but had always held back from pursuing, partly because Ryan had insisted it was too ambitious, too risky. Now there was no one to hold me back, no one to drain my accounts or question my vision. Just me, my determination, and a future limited only by the boundaries I chose to accept or transcend. The boutique hummed with activity around me, a testament to what I had built, what I had protected, what I would continue to grow. Ryan had tried to steal it all away with a single heartless text message. Instead, he had inadvertently set me free, free to thrive, free to succeed, free to become the woman I was always meant to be. Outside my office window, spring flowers bloomed in the planter boxes I'd installed along the sidewalk. New growth, new life, new possibilities, much like me. My name is Jessica Winters, and this is the story of how my husband's betrayal became the catalyst for my greatest triumph. The winter of Ryan's deception had passed, and in its place, an endless spring of possibility had bloomed. End of story.